All right, so we are going to be testing out here Professor X. Now, right now, we are on the test server, and we're going to be testing Professor X here in a few different areas. We're going to be testing him here in Arena. We're also going to be testing him here out in the chaotic raids as well. Now, what I learned here from this testing is that primarily, you're going to want to bring in Professor X. You're going to want to bring in, at least for Arena, I'm talking about now, you're going to want to bring in Professor X. You're going to want to bring in Mephisto. You're going to want to bring in Null. You're going to want to bring in Odin. And then the fifth character, there's actually some variations of characters here that you can bring in that will actually work. Now, the idea here is that primarily you want to be able to stop their enemy, Professor X, right? And what's the best way to probably do that is by stunning him. And you'll see the characters that I bring in to do that. But then there's also like one other variable that gives Professor X a little bit of a boost as well that actually does work too. And you will see that as we go throughout these matchups here. Now, I will say this, we're on the test server, right? And because we're on the test server, we have a 7-7 Professor X. That is not going to be the case for anyone really when we're starting out getting Professor X here. For some of us, it's going to be quite some while before we get Professor X. But for people who are unlocking Professor X here, you're not going to have a 7-7. And I'll be honest with you, a 7-7 Professor X actually causes more problems at times than it does do you good. So let's go in here. Now, the first matchup that we do is a matchup here where we go up against a non-Professor X team here on defense. So we're going to talk about some of the mechanics here that are going on in these particular matchups. So the first matchup that we load into here, and you'll see one of the fifth characters that I am running with this team, but primarily here, I didn't run Mephisto initially here in the beginning, and you will see that I put in Mephisto a little bit later on, and you will understand why as we kind of go through here and we talk about it. Now, some of the mechanics here to pay attention to, with Professor X's passive, right? Whenever an enemy takes a turn, that enemy will attack their ally that has the highest damage. In this particular scenario here, that is Gore on their team. All right, so boom, Mephisto goes the first time, he attacks his own enemy Gore. He goes into my Thanos, uses his special here against my Thanos, doesn't land trauma because of course in Arena, Thanos does not get trauma landed on him. So then he follows up here with the basic, he hits my Professor X. But as you can see, because Mephisto went twice, and because those two times when he took a turn, he attacked his own ally that had the highest damage, which was Gore, you'll see here that Gore is essentially almost gone, right? So, all right, boom. Then we go into the rest of the matchup here. So then Mino goes here. So we do his ultimate. That's going to kill their Gore. Then we use Storm here to stun Odin. Didn't really matter, right? Like really at this point, I mean, it kind of did matter a little bit. But what's going to happen here is that their Odin is going to go. He attacked Thanos because Thanos at this point is the one with the highest damage on their side. He does his special. I do my special. Odin here does off of this Fury with the basic. Then I do the special here on Odin and the matchup is over. You'll see it here. Special, mind controls, a couple characters here, but only one is needed to kill him. And then the matchup here is done. Let's go here into an actual defense that has Professor X on it. Like I said here, I'm using Storm because I want to try to stun their enemy, Professor X. So you'll see how that matchup works out. So we go in. Eventually, we go in. As a reminder, their Mephisto. Now, this is what's interesting, right? Their Mephisto is going first. So because their Mephisto is going first, he's attacking the ally with the highest damage. Because we all have a 7-7 Professor X, the enemy with the highest damage, the enemy ally with the highest damage here is Professor X. So he hit Professor X, who now has 2 stacks of bleeds and a defense down on it, right? Then he goes into my Odin and he's specialed, but I don't get trauma on my Odin because Odin doesn't get trauma here. And then he comes back with the basic, and I believe that he does hit my Odin again twice, but then Professor X does get hit there too. Then I use my Storm and I stun their Professor X. Now, for in normal circumstances here, like if it wasn't for the fact that my Odin had so many bleeds on him, I probably would have just basicked. I probably should still could have just basicked anyways, right? I could have just basicked here, and I could have just made sure that their Professor X was just gonzo, like, and I didn't have to deal with him again. But in this scenario here, I just specialed because I wanted to clear buffs. I wanted to give some buffs here. But then whenever their Odin goes, he then attacks their Professor X again. And then now because he specialed here, now my Professor X gets to go, and then I do the special on their Professor X, but I could have probably saved that if I could have saved that and done it on Odin. But some cool things happen here too, right? Because he did the special here on their Professor X, the adjacent allies that are around them, they also get blinded. They also get trauma on them. And because Null is a controller, then he also gets ability block as well. Now I'm also able to use my Null. I use my ultimate ability here. And I'm gonna say this, like one of the things that would have been really cool with Professor X is if I was able to get to his ultimate. But you'll see here in any of these matchups, I never go to his ultimate, not one time, bro. Like I never get to this dude's ult. Never. I special here, and but like really the matchup is over. Like Odin's gonna get tunneled down here. This was easy, but the next matchup is not easy. And the reason why is because of a little bit of RNG. So I go in here again with Storm, Professor X, the three, right? I'm still using endgame Thanos here. Their Mephisto's attacking their Professor X, but then guess what happens to me? Their Mephisto now attacks my Professor X with his special. So now I have trauma. And that's huge because I won't be able to use my Odin to clear that off because it's trauma, right? So now you'll see this matchup, I don't remember it going well because of that RNG component to it. Now I do stun their Professor X, but then their Odin goes. And their Odin clears anything off before I can even really target down their Odin, right? So here I am with the special again. Now I'm getting wiped. And then now their Null's gonna go. And then guess what? Now my Professor X is gone. And now I've lost the matchup. Because yeah, sure, they've lost their Professor X too, but they still have Odin. They still have Odin. They still have Null. They still have Thanos. They still have Mephisto. Like the matchup is over at that point, right? So next, what I choose to do here in the next matchup is that I'm like, okay, I don't like the RNG component a little bit here, and I want to secure that stun a little bit more here on their Professor X. So what you'll see is that I actually go into this next matchup here with Havoc. Now, the reason why I'm using Havoc in this matchup is because in this one, whenever he stuns with this special, he can also land trauma. So that means that whenever Odin goes, I won't have to worry about Odin cleansing that off of their Professor X. So I go with Havoc here. I do the special. I do this. I don't know why I'm clicking on the ult, but I do the special here into Professor X. And then that's it. And that yeah, he has a death proof now, but it won't matter because whenever their Odin goes, he's going to clear that off. And then Professor X is just going to ultimately end up bleeding out here. So it doesn't matter. Right. And in this scenario here, I should have just went special directly here into Odin because that would have made this like significantly easier. Yeah, attacking Null is fine, but really I should have went directly into Odin. I still won the matchup anyways. But I'm just saying, like, to make it easy, I should have directly went into Odin here with the special because that would have landed the trauma, all that stuff on him at that point, and then that, you know, we would have been able to win the matchup at that moment. All right, so then you'll see that we do that a couple more times here, but then there is a period of time where now I'll pause here real quick because I want to say this, right? There are some moments where it actually makes sense for you to do the ultimate on Professor X instead of actually doing the special on Professor X with Havoc, just to make sure that you're able to delete their Professor X. But I wanted to show you a different matchup here where I think this one we end up losing a little bit here. yeah, once again, we end up losing that one. And that was the same thing again. It was just a matter of like who goes first, who doesn't go first, who gets attacked, those type of things that kind of happen here in this matchup. This one is a little bit of a different variable because there's a gladiator. Now the gladiator here on the enemy team, the gladiator doesn't gain taunt because before Professor X takes a turn, an enemy cannot gain taunt. So the gladiator here actually doesn't really matter that much. Like I would never put gladiator on defense just because of that reason. Like he's effectively rendered useless here. But same scenario. This one, Mephisto attacks my no this time. But then something funky happens here, right? You see that like their Odin just went super fast this time. And my Odin goes, right? But then here we're getting the All-Father's Fury again. And in this scenario, you'll see again, I do the special, I do trauma stun here, and I am able to get rid of their Professor X eventually. But then what happens is that also I lose my Professor X, right? So then this matchup actually goes awry because I don't have enough of the rest of the cogs around here to be able to make this fully work. So then I lose this matchup. So then let's go a little bit further on here. And let's go into this time. What I do is that I said, all right, screw it. I'm going to bring in my Mephisto. And I'm going to start, kind of like seeing if that makes a little bit of a difference here, right? Which I think it does in this one. So here again, I get to go with my Mephisto. I shouldn't have specialed into Odin. Like that was a dumb thing by me. I specialed into Odin. Like there was no reason for me to special into Odin. I should have specialed directly into Professor X. I would have been able to land trauma on Professor X, and then the matchup would have went significantly easier at that point, and he wouldn't have been able to clear the buff. So like sometimes I just do dumb things, right? I'm testing to see what happens here. And that's kind of why I lost this matchup. You'll see here in the future, I don't do that. I make sure I special. I did use Shadow King here to try to do a couple of things in this matchup. It works. It works. Once again, there's still an RNG component to it as well. That like makes this a little bit like different. This time, I think what I did is I used the ultimate here to just get rid of him because then I knew Shadow King would come in and destroy him. And then that enables me at some point right here to be able to use my Professor X ultimate here on their Odin. Not ultimate, sorry, the special on their Odin. Because I use No's ultimate here, All-Father's Fury doesn't matter. When I use my special here on their Odin, that destroys their Odin, clears the buffs as well off of Guardian, and then the matchup is over, right? But here's two characters that I wanted to show you that will that I thought were really interesting, the fact that they actually worked. And the first character here was using Black Cat. Now the reason why I'm using Black Cat here is because she has a trauma stun with her special. And when we go into this matchup, you'll see here that the trauma stun works quite well, but because we had Mephisto, their Mephisto was tunneling down their characters, like it didn't really fully matter as much because basically she was like we had some good RNG here, things worked out well, right? So we did the special, they did trauma on him, we did the basic again, and then we really didn't need Black Cat here at this point. Like she was nice. I think we would have won this anyways. I don't know why I was clicking on Odin. Odin on the first turn will not gain that trauma, so it doesn't matter. And then that kills him, and then the matchup here again is over. But then here's an additional fifth character that actually worked as well too. And we decided to throw in here Guardian. And the reason why we threw in Guardian here is because Guardian will give offense up. And because of the offense up, that will allow us to do a lot more damage. It will actually make the matchup pretty fast too as well. So the thing is here is that you have multiple available options that you could use here in Arena, but there also is an RNG component. Who does their Mephisto target, right? Like there's still that factor in it. Sometimes if you choose to use Havoc, it may make more sense for you to actually do the ultimate first instead of doing the special. Also, you may not even want to use Habit because maybe your Havoc is not big enough, right? So Black Cat and Guardian are good here. You get the offense up here from Guardian. This actually worked really well. I took a risk here, by the way. Like if you saw that, like I took a risk here. The risk that I took here was that I did the special. Oh my gosh, go back. I did the special here. I targeted Odin. That could have directly gone to Guardian and not hit Professor X. But I don't think it would have mattered because he would have bled out anyways. But Guardian works here because he gives offense sub to everyone, Professor X mainly, and that helps you to be able to mow down the characters a little bit faster here. And you know, like I said, Professor X is good, but whether or not and Professor X is good, but like I think he's going to be better at lower stars for you. Does that make sense? Because then you won't have to worry about him getting hit. Or maybe him taking the hits is probably best for you too. It really all depends. But let's show you this really quickly here. I want to toggle over to raids and show you just some testing here that we did with him in raids as well. I thought was pretty fun. We're gonna skip this first matchup because I did some dumb things here in the first matchup. But in the second matchup here, this is actually kind of fun. What I liked about this is, as you can see, like directly here on spawn, he's stopping Black Knight here from being able to gain taunt, right? Which now means that you're able to focus down on the Orcus characters and get rid of them, right? Like that was what I thought was great here about being able to use Professor X, mainly because of his passive ability. When he finally does take a turn, it's nice, but just keep in mind that like his special and his ultimate ability here, massively long cooldowns, like absolutely massively long cooldowns. So it doesn't work out as well as you desire for it to, other than just like with his passive ability here, which is meaningful because you have a couple Sasquatches here in like node 2, node 3. So that is where I think that you'll probably find the most value here, is just being able to stop the first initial characters from being able to gain taunt, and then you can use your other extreme characters. I brought in Sunspot to be able to give energy here, ability energy over to the Forge and Nightcrawler, and then of course Old Man Logan because he's a beast, and then of course Professor X here. That's kind of the way I went about it. The next node here, you'll see the same thing again. In a sense, actually not so much here. Like this one was fine, like nothing crazy was going on here. The speed up with Nightcrawler did some things. Nothing crazy sexy going on here. What I thought was cool is, I think I'm trying to remember if we did the ultimate here in this. Yeah, we did the ultimate here. You'll see the ultimate does an insane amount of damage. Like an insane amount of damage. So that stuff is cool. And then once again, like in the last node here, you'll see again, when the Sasquatches drop down, you'll see that there is no taunt here on the enemy Sasquatches. So that will be your help here in this particular node. And his basic attack is still pretty good too. So I'm not gonna tell you that he's not good. I'm just saying don't expect anything too crazy going on here with Sasquatch. But fun characters, Professor X, I think definitely changes the meta here in Arena. I think your Professor X, when you get him, is probably gonna be better than having a 7/7 Professor X, in my opinion. But let me know what your thoughts are. Would love to hear you. Leave that down below in the comments. I appreciate y'all watching the video. Hopefully you got some good value out of this here. And until next time, and as always, y'all be blessed. Y'all be safe. Bye.